Alright, let's start things off with something that I think is really interesting. Though there are a whopping 15 NES games available to be played in the game via the NES systems, there are also a few more that are normally unplayable. For the ones that aren't playable at all, there is reference in the game to several NES games including, I'm gonna butcher this, Nazo no Murasameju, or the Mysterious Murasame Castle, which, fun fact, is where Takamaru, who appears in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, comes from, Gomoku Narabe Renju, or 5 in a row, Super Mario Bros. 2, I assume the Lost Levels version, Mahjong, and NES Open Tournament Golf. Since they are referenced, I think it's fair to assume that these were once planned to also be playable in the game, but for one reason or another they were scrapped, be it obscurity outside of Japan, memory, or time constraints, or a combination of each. Then there are 4 more NES games which might not technically be unused, but without a cheating device they are incredibly difficult to obtain, that they might as well be considered as such. Dubbed the Forbidden 4, these games are classics including Ice Climber, Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros., and The Legend of Zelda. Methods for normally obtaining these games vary by region too. For the Japanese version of the game, Super Mario Bros. Was given away as part of a limited prize by the Famitsu magazine, and Ice Climber could be obtained as a housewarming gift via a service where one could transfer data from an original N64 copy of the game to the GameCube version. This service had required a player to actually send in their copy of Dobutsu no Mori as well as a GameCube memory card to Nintendo so they could do the transfer and then send it back. Now obviously this service has been long discontinued, and as such, this game is no longer normally obtainable. Then in the North American release of Animal Crossing, only Mario Bros. And Ice Climber are legitimately obtainable and could only be done so via having their respective e-reader card, and I guess a Game Boy Advance, an e-reader, and a GameCube GBA cable. Yeah, pretty complex and pricey setup just to play these NES games. And apparently these required e-reader cards in question are very rare. I'm pretty sure only a tiny portion of players were able to access these legitimately. And finally, there's The Legend of Zelda, and this game is just straight up not normally accessible in either regional release of the game. So yeah, if you want to access it, you're gonna need a cheating device. The European release of the game never got any of these legitimately, so they truly are unused there. And the NES stuff doesn't end there. It turns out there is unused leftover programming that allows for NES ROMs to be loaded into the game externally via a memory card. And get this, they can even be played. So normally, there's the one generic NES console item that can be obtained that doesn't play a game when interacted with. But in fact, as discovered by one James Chambers, this item scans memory cards for files that contain NES ROMs. If you're kinda confused here, long story short, basically the game has a built-in NES emulator used for the NES games. And it looks like there might have once been plans to allow the player to load even more NES games via having them saved on a memory card. It seems Nintendo might have had some bigger plans for the NES game functionality here, almost like an early form of a virtual console of sorts. My guess is that Nintendo abandoned whatever these plans were, as they might have led to competition with the NES e-reader cards that were later released for the Game Boy Advance. But yeah, apparently this is still completely functional, and although it seems like it's a bit tough to set up, you can load in basically any NES ROM. And this discovery has also paved the way for being able to patch the game via the memory card and also execute arbitrary code execution, or ACE. Pretty cool. For those interested, I'll leave a link to the original blog post of the discovery and methodology used down in the description below.